In Mexico, drug-related violence is at an all-time high. In 2006, around 6,000 people were murdered. That's more than the number of people killed in Afghanistan in the same year.
The whole country is immersed in a fight between members of organized crime.
We are in the middle of a war, an intensive war.
The drug dealers have more power than the national army.
In this one-hour Vanguard report, we'll look at the fight amongst Mexico's government and its most notorious drug lords in a society that's caught in the middle.
There is worry with more violence can spread to the other side of the border.
So we are crossing over right now. We are heading from El Paso, Texas, into Juarez, Mexico. We were headed to Juarez, Mexico's most violent city. It's a battleground that doesn't look like one. Looking over the skyline, it seems so peaceful. So it's a little strange and disconcerting to think that in the last 3 months there have been more than 500 drug-related murders. And that's why we came to Juarez. We wanted to try to understand what's going on. Juarez doesn't look like a battleground until you start to see where all the shootings have been going on. Less than a year ago, drug traffickers tried to kill the chief of police of Juarez at this site. They drove past here and fired over 200 bullets. So you can see that some of these bullet holes have been patched up. The chief of police actually survived that incident, but his successor was killed just a few months ago. At this intersection, the director of the prison was killed in his car. We stopped at some of the locations where recent murders have taken place. 2 people here, 5 people there, 1 person here. There were around 1,400 drug-related killings in Juarez in 2008. Almost no corner has been left untouched. It's like a city of death. Everywhere we go, somebody was killed at a gas station, a bar, outside a house. It's crazy.
You cannot walk freely in the streets. If you want to go to a downtown, you cannot go to a mall with your friends as the way before. Why? Because you don't know when the bad guys are going to be there, going to start killing people.
With everything you do, when you go out in the street, there's a sense of stress, an extra stress. So is the one behind me or the one in front of me a drug lord? Is it going to be a shootout just in front of me?
So this right here, the Rio Bravo, is what separates Juarez, Mexico from El Paso, Texas. You can see behind me, there's a Border Patrol truck looking into Mexico. And so they call this the Juarez Plaza. It's one of several plazas which are essentially corridors, drug routes into the United States, and that's what the drug traffickers are fighting for control of. They're fighting for control of the plaza. The main plazas provide easy access to the U.S. interstate highway system, which the cartels use to deliver drugs to the markets that they control in the U.S. The mayor of Juarez was elected at the end of 2007 to bring reform to the city.
Well, the whole country is immersed in a fight between members of organized crime, but a couple of the syndicates have their bases, one of them in Culiacán, Sinaloa, the second one in the city of Juarez. And because this is where they're based at, this is where the war between those groups has been more intense. The drug trade into the U.S. is what causes a lot of the problems in Mexico, because the money that's created by that is not because people from Juarez are consuming drugs, it's because people in the United States are demanding drugs and they flow through the city of Juarez.
One day I went out with a local journalist who's been covering the crime wave in Juarez. So Arturo, what is this radio right here?
This is a scanner, police scanner, and we can hear the codes from police.
We found out about a shooting in the outskirts of town and rushed over. You drive like a police.
Yes, I feel like a police. Disculpa, ¿dónde encontraron al muerto?
¿Ya se fueron?
¿Ya se fueron?
Sí, ya.
Gracias. Oiga, disculpe, ¿dónde fueron? ¿Lo encontraron a la persona?
Allí.
Did they take the body away already?
Yes, they're taking still the forensics. ¿Qué fue lo que pasó ahí, disculpe?
Mataron a dos.
A dos. ¿Y ustedes escucharon los balazos?
Ella sí, yo.
Yesterday in the night, he just heard the shots, 2 shots, and then some kid find the body, and were 2 bodies.
Sounds like an execution.
Yeah.
We got into the site just as the forensics van was taking the bodies away, but Arturo's photographer friends had gotten there a few minutes earlier and were able to document the crime scene. In one video, you can see shell casings on top of a cliff. It looks as if the 2 men were executed there, and then their bodies were thrown into the trash dump below. We just got word that there's been another shooting, this time a police officer. So we're headed back to the neighborhood where we were before.
I think it's here. Yes, oye, Ray, ¿dónde está el muertito? ¿Dónde está? ¿Dónde lo mataron? And the dead body, it's inside of the store called Modelorama, LNE.
Do we know if it was a police that was shot?
Yes, it's supposed to be a police.
So this is just another police officer dead. There have been 40 killed so far this year in Juarez. Are scenes like this, people getting killed, something that you see often?
Dice que sí es muy común para ustedes ya estar viendo que están matando gente. ¿No es común?
No es común.
¿No te parece que sea común?
No.
Oh, he says that it's not very often here.
Okay.
Bueno,
Thank you, gracias.
Thank you. Ready?
Yeah. So those kids don't talk because they're thugs, right?
Yes, they are part of the gang, so
Right. They don't want to
they
talk.
just lie. Okay, ahí voy para allá.
They're just happening one after another. We just heard that a couple other people might have been killed. One, a very successful businessman. So we're following this news crew to the scene. We know
I
who
think
it
there
is?
are 2 bodies. It's supposed that was bodyguards of this owner, of these people.
Of the owner of this amusement park.
Right. Al fondo, oh, there is the body. Yes.
It's believed that the owner of this amusement park was injured. He was the target, but he wasn't killed. He was with some bodyguards. There are 2 bodies, 2 dead bodies on this site right now. In the last 4 hours, we've been to 3 different sites, and there have been 5 different people murdered. All in all, a total of 11 people were killed that day in Juarez. Mexico is a popular tourist destination, especially for residents of the U.S. border states. As a kid, I used to travel here with my family on vacation. But fewer tourists are making their way across the border these days. Once bustling streets are now empty. The increase in drug violence has produced a situation where not only tourists but locals are afraid to be on the streets.
Juarez is a city without law. There's no law here.
It's not just that you have to be careful when you go out or that when you're walking around the streets, like maybe something's going to happen to me. It's just that you talk to people and they're just hopeless.
In these days, you can trust. You see a policeman and if you doubt it, that would be in the cartel, that would be a honest policeman.
People have little trust in a police force that's become known for working with and protecting the cartels. When you see all these cops out here, it's hard not to wonder who's a good guy and who's corrupt, because there has been so much corruption in the police world here in Mexico. The police don't have the best reputation here.
They have a very bad reputation. It's important to say it, and it's important to recognize it. It's the highest level of corruption there could be in a police force, and I'm in the process of firing about 400 out of the 1,600 police officers for failing lie detector testing, where we have specifically asked them if they're involved in corruption with organized crime.
Some people blame the rise in violence to power shifts within Mexico's government. For 71 years, Mexico was ruled by one party, the PRI, which maintained order by allowing some cartels to operate as long as they kept their violence out of public sight. But in 2000, the PRI lost power and Mexico ushered in a multi-party democracy. Corrupt elements within the new political parties had ties to different cartels, and the war over control of the drug trade began to escalate. In Tijuana, one of Mexico's most violent cities, I visited the office of Alberto Capella, an outsider and reformer who was brought in to head the police force and to break the ties between the cartels and corrupt officials. Well, you mentioned that you're fighting these two wars, a war within the police world and a war within the drug trafficking world. You must have a lot of enemies.
A lot of enemies, yes. And every day I have a new ones. Every year we are losing our space, our liberty, our freedom, because it's in the hands of the criminals.
Capella offered to give us a tour of the city. He showed up at our hotel in a convoy with an entourage. We're heading right now on a patrol. We have one police truck in front of us. We have two armored vehicles full of policemen behind us, and we are here in the armored vehicle of Mr. Capella. You can tell by this. It's very thick. Alberto Capella needs this much protection. Just before he took the job as head of Tijuana's police, 20 to 30 armed men came to his house. Capella was alone. His attackers fired 250 rounds into his house, but missed him. Capella, who had only held a gun half a dozen times in his life, fired back and drove them away. And that was 3 days before you officially took the job. Did you have any reservations?
And when they do that, I think maybe they don't like me.
You think?
I don't know, but maybe, no?
Oh my gosh.
There's a killing in a restaurant. These ones are 4 bodies who we found in.
And so these are all the scenes that you visited?
Uh-huh. In the last 2 weeks.
It's just body after body. Capella tried to reform Tijuana's police force by getting rid of more than 100 officers. But the violence didn't stop. The month after we met him, he was fired as police secretary. While killings in Mexico's drug war continue to escalate, kidnappings are also on the rise as criminal groups look for other ways to make money. You were kidnapped.
Yes, I was.
Can you tell me about that experience and what happened?
I spent 83 days with my hands tied up and my feet tied up to an iron bed.
In 2008,